Do I say he's a crazy man? A little crazy.
Oh,
the remote crew arrived at my house this morning, and it is Looney Tunes over there, but we're going to do some great cooking from my kitchen if Jim doesn't tear it apart.
He won't.
Crazy morning. I had a great time 2 days ago. I had a chance to talk with Richard Dreyfuss, and I must tell you, he has a wonderful sense of humor. He had me laughing before we even started the interview. He was here on Monday as the guest speaker at, at the East Coast Academy Awards Gala that Price Waterhouse threw to benefit multiple sclerosis. He won the Academy Award for his wonderful performance in The Goodbye Girl. And I first asked Richard about being the middle child of three, asking him if that had anything to do with his vying for attention and gaining a sense of humor.
Well, I had an older brother who was the funniest person on earth. Funnier than anybody in the world. And I was competing with him to a great extent. And I think part of my acting probably comes from that, because I could never compete with his spontaneous, but I could perform, and he couldn't.
When did you know you could perform?
When I was 9.
How?
I said to my mother, I want to be an actor, and she said, don't just talk about it. And I went down to the West Side Jewish Community Center, and I began acting these historic Jewish roles.
And then in high school?
And then in high school. And
But you went from New York, from Brooklyn, Queens to Beverly Hills. Now, was your father a nomad?
No, I mean, you know, my father was looking for a good entrepreneurial slot, you know, and he got one. He got one in California.
Wow.
Not necessarily, at the beginning it wasn't entrepreneurial. First we went to Europe, he wanted to work in Europe, and we couldn't find a job. And then he came out to California looking for a good mobile slot. And he found one and did pretty well.
Was he a dreamer?
I think I would not call him a dreamer, no.
Are you a dreamer?
Yes, to a greater extent than my father. Yeah, he's much more pragmatic. My father is much more reality-oriented. I, on the other hand, am just coming in from Pluto, you know, I'm coming around the bright side of the moon there.
You admit you're crazy, but you don't want to be.
I have moments when I want to be, but most of the time I would like to be rooted on the ground. Yes.
But you're fun. What's wrong with being crazy? What's the downside of your craziness?
Electroshock therapy springs to mind right offhand. Pencils in your mouth.
This is a free session for you, so go right ahead. Lay down and tell me all the things you've always wanted to say.
There's always a downside. It's not that. I like to live in the world.
But a lot of therapy. I mean, why all the therapy to get there? I mean, why do you?
Oh, it's not like that has been the centerpiece of my life. I just, people go into therapy now like people take an elective. It's not like, oh my God, he's in therapy. Oh my God, sick. Get out of the way, Martha. He's going to a psychiatrist. Wow. Are you going to a psychiatrist? Wow.
After today. All right, but American Graffiti. George Lucas, you go ahead and you make this film, and then you ask Lucas to cut you out of it because you weren't sure about it. Went off to Canada, and Cindy Williams called and said, we're stars, Richard. And you had a hard time with that kind of success.
I had never been in a movie for 90 minutes. All of a sudden, I'm seeing me as a 40-foot face on the screen for an hour and a half. I freaked out. So would you. Everyone would.
But is a part of that, seriously, not being prepared for success? I mean, you strive and you strive and you work hard, and you did. You've studied and learned and worked hard. And all of a sudden, there you are. Is it like, wait, is the game over?
Well, that's part of it. It wasn't the artistic part. It was the other stuff, people expecting you to know how to fulfill that position of stardom, celebrityhood. People expecting you to know what the consequences were of all of your actions. I didn't understand the consequences of actions, such as relationships with people in the business, and how do you respond to business this and business that. I was unused to doing business. Business had been done by other people.
Suddenly, when you're successful, do you lose control of yourself? People want you in different places and for different reasons. And is there an element of fear that goes with that?
Well, it's fear, it's feelings of of worthlessness, of not deserving that position. One of these days, I'm actually going to put together into a coherent statement all of the feelings and opinions I have about this phenomena, which was so central to my life for the last 10 years.
Yeah. You were so good in The Goodbye Girl, and you admit it.
Oh, stop.
Yeah, but you admit it. You said you could play that you could have played that forever.
It was fun.
Now that's an old quote, but do you still feel that way?
Well, I mean, I never really felt that way, but it was a great line. It was a wonderful film, and they were wonderful people, and I could have... It was fabulous.
Why, though? Why was it so good, and why were you so extraordinary in that?
Well, Neil has, on top of all the other talents that Neil has as a writer, he has a fabulous ear. Now, that script started out as many other things. And when he got that relationship, we read the script once every 3 months for a year. And every time we read it, he listened to how Marcia and I really spoke. And he changed it so that by the time we shot it, he had caught us on paper.
Isn't that great? That doesn't always happen.
No.
When you didn't want Jaws.
That's right, I didn't want that movie.
Why?
Always, if you ever want a sure thing, bet against my instincts.
Uh-huh.
Okay? I thought American Graffiti was just a kid movie that would make a little money. I never thought Doody Kravitz would be sold in the United States. I thought Jaws was a fish movie. Get the drift?
I get it.
Okay.
I know it's been 3 years ago, but the fact that you were in this accident and you were on drugs and alcohol and you opted for and got drug rehabilitation, it's a while back, but talk about that. Did that bring about a new depth in Richard Dreyfuss that you didn't have before?
Well, it's very difficult to say whether that's brought about depth. Without an argument, it saved my life and refocused, or allowed me to focus, my life. That also is probably, in the same sense that there was in Moses' life at one point, the burning bush. That is the burning bush of my life right now. It is something to be studied, to be mulled over, it is the centerpiece of my thought. I have not yet come to all the decisions. See, that is what is brewing in me.
Well, I admire that, though. I mean, you don't
I don't
seem to
expect,
mind.
I mean, there's nothing to argue about. This is not something I would expect people to not admire. It's not a question of, I'm not out there for that in this area. It's a fact. The fact is that at some point, I'll understand. I understand parts of what happened, but certainly not enough to articulate yet.
Did you miss a lot during that time when you were drugging and gaining weight and drinking and all those things that seem to be so prevalent in Hollywood anyway? Did you miss a lot of the good things?
Yeah, I missed my work. I missed my life. I wasn't there. Whatever really happens within a real person on the planet Earth, with and among real people, I missed. I wasn't there. I'll tell you something. You have an obligation, or a person can assume an obligation. And that obligation is to, on a daily or some kind of basis, review in your head the slights and hurts that you have given others, to be willing to make amends to those people that you've hurt, to be constantly willing to view the wreckage of your past and to make amends for the future. Mm. There is not an obligation that everyone has, but certainly an opportunity that everyone has. And that is to witness their own lives in a Christian sense. To witness the mistakes and triumphs of your life. And that way, others can truly learn.
Special man, Richard Dreyfuss. I really enjoyed that. He is now married. He has been for 2 years to a lovely lady. And he's learned through his mistakes, which is really what life's all about, isn't it?